Ignite your curiosity with Austin Next. We're watching Austin transform from a thriving ecosystem into a global superstar. With our host, Jason Scharf, we aspire to better comprehend the true nature of innovation. Together, we will uncover what makes a successful ecosystem and navigate the technologies shaping our future. Now let's dive into what's next.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Austin Private Wealth, a registered investment advisor focused on fee-only financial planning and investment management. Their mission is to serve affluent clients with personalized financial advice, fostering a trusted relationship that will endure for generations to come. Austin Private Wealth is not just about managing wealth. They're about inspiring you to embrace a future filled with possibilities and helping you architect enduring legacies. Their core values of integrity, service, caring, excellence, and growth are at the heart of everything they do. Connect with them today at austinprivatewealth.com.
Austin Private Wealth is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Austin Private Wealth and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by Austin Private Wealth unless a client service agreement is in place. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
As we continue our look at the Austin capital environment, we turn to the newcomers to the region. Over the past 18 months, we've seen numerous VC firms either opening up offices here or an outright move. This influx of capital is one of the many drivers for why 2021 has been an historic year in Austin startup fundraising. These new firms are also increasing the reach of the Austin ecosystem. While based here, they're deploying capital around the globe. One such firm that has recently established a new presence in our region is HealthQuest Capital, and today we're speaking with the founder and managing partner, Garheng Kong. Garheng founded HealthQuest Capital in 2012 to improve people's lives through improving healthcare on a significant scale. His vision was to build a best-in-class team of the highest talent and integrity to work with outstanding entrepreneurs to transform healthcare through his high-growth companies while generating outsized risk-adjusted returns for investors. Garheng founded HealthQuest Capital in 2012 to improve people's lives through improving healthcare on a significant scale. His vision was to build a best-in-class team of the highest talent and integrity to work with outstanding entrepreneurs while generating outsized returns for investors. A physician, scientist, and engineer by training, Garheng has over 2 decades of experience investing in innovative healthcare companies with a long list of success, 25 IPOs and M&A exits. He's represented HealthQuest on numerous boards, including Austin's own Everly Health. Garheng's interest and industry footprint are broad, as he also serves on the board of LabCorp, Almera Sciences, Strongbridge, Be the Match, the Duke University Medical Center, and has served as chairman on 9 boards. He's an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow, Kauffman Fellows Mentor, and a member of YPO. Garheng received undergraduate degrees in both chemical engineering and biological sciences from Stanford while on an athletic scholarship. He then earned an MD, PhD, and MBA from Duke University, graduating number 1 in his class in each instance. His early career included stints at GlaxoSmithKline, McKinsey, and a medical device startup, Therox, before joining InterSouth Partners and then Sophie Novo Investments.
Garheng, welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Austin Next podcast.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
Tell us how you got started, both in startups like Therox and then venture capital.
Yeah, so if I think about the origins, in some sense, turns out everybody in my family is a physician by training. I'm the only non-practicing MD in my family. So in some sense, getting a medical degree is a rite of passage. You can flip hamburgers or do whatever you want after you get your MD. And so I grew up in a family focused on healthcare and medicine, and I really appreciated what my father did, to be fair, what my wife does as well, and the opportunity to help patients in particular, and having that sort of intimate relationship that physicians have with their patients, of course, knowing their medical conditions, but also knowing their family members and the names of all the kids and so forth. So growing up, I thought I would be a physician. But along the way, I thought, well, I might have the opportunity to help more people if I invented something. So instead of just seeing, call it 50,000 patients over the course of my medical career, I might invent something, whether it be a new device or drug or diagnostic, and have the opportunity to reach 50 million people. And so sort of the arc of my career, I was a bit of a professional student and got a few degrees along the way, but each one of those degrees brought me from medicine to science and engineering, ultimately into business. And so as I had the opportunity to start a company, I thought, well, maybe I can invent something or develop something that will really impact patients. And I was fortunate to do that a couple times. And then I thought, well, why do one or two if you can partner with 50 companies? And so again, at each level, the opportunity to scale and impact more and more people, although you don't know the individual names. So that's how I ended up on the business and entrepreneurship side and ultimately on the investing side.
Great. Let's turn to HealthQuest. Tell me about the thesis of the company. What are the types of companies you back and some of the exits, some of which are well known here in Austin?
Sure. Happy to talk about that. So maybe from two dimensions. First, if you will, the mission and the way we operate. That is pretty clear. We are focused on broadly improving people's lives through healthcare innovation. The second part, of course, is we do it by working with best-in-class individuals. And then the third is we happen to be doing it by investing. We could be doing it in different ways. For us, it happens to be investing. And so when you get to that third point, the question is, what's the strategy? And again, in some sense, it's quite straightforward. We're focused on optimizing value in healthcare. And value in healthcare is defined as two things. One is better patient outcomes, and the other is better health economics, so cost benefit, if you will. So our focus when we partner with innovative healthcare companies, we really ask, do the things that you do result in better patient outcomes or better health economics, or hopefully both? What that also means is that we are agnostic to the underlying modality. So we don't ask ourselves, is it this kind of company from a subsector of healthcare? We are happy to partner with medical device companies and diagnostic companies and digital health companies and tech-enabled healthcare service companies, really anything in healthcare, as long as it results in better patient outcomes and better health economics. Traditionally, a lot of firms categorize themselves as we do med tech, or we do biotech, or we do diagnostics. So it's a little bit of a different approach. From a stage point of view, I would say that the companies we partner with are all commercial stage companies. So we don't take what we consider to be binary, sort of regulatory, technical, sort of does it work risk. And we typically invest $30 or $40 million of equity per company. We can do as little as 15. We've gone as up to 100 into companies. So there's a range in terms of sizing. And we have been privileged to partner with some fantastic entrepreneurs and companies. Certainly, there's a company called Castle Biosciences based in Texas here that is now publicly traded, and we are fortunate to partner with them very, very early. We were just talking about Everly Well, now Everly Health here, also in Austin. In fact, ironically, we've partnered with several companies in the Central Texas area in the last couple of years. But in terms of overall outcomes, I'd say in the last year or two, companies like Amwell, Pulmonx, Avedro, all of which gone public. And then earlier this year, a couple of companies like BardyDx and Biotheranostics were both acquired by large corporate partners. So it's been a really good time for the companies that we've worked with, and certainly a lot of hard work on their part.
But a lot of satisfaction on their part and yours to see them succeed.
Yeah.
It's been going on 2 years now since the pandemic first became a visible item and began spreading around the world. And to say it's been disruptive is an understatement. We've seen some sectors absolutely grow and come onto their own. Some sectors have absolutely struggled just to survive. How has HealthQuest adapted to what's going on? What's the change in your thesis and the change in where you're investing due to the pandemic?
Great question. I'll answer it two different ways. One is from a HealthQuest as a firm, how have we changed? And ironically there, not much. And the reason why I bring that up is when we started the firm 9-10 years ago at this point, we were already distributed. And so we had a distributed model where we had partners in multiple locations by design. And so ironically, when the pandemic happened and everybody was trying to get used to virtual teamwork, we'd already been using Zoom for probably 7 years. So from a day-to-day point of view, it actually did not affect how we operated. Now, of course, the companies that we partnered with, they did see an impact in terms of how they operated, especially if they had to go from in-person to virtual. So we did see some of that. But from the trends and how we think about investing, I'd note a few things. One is, ironically, the trends are mostly the same in healthcare in terms of better patient outcomes, better health economics, adoption curves. What is different is the rate of adoption in terms of what's happened. And so almost everything has been accelerated. The easy examples are telemedicine. Right? Telemedicine has been around for 10 years, had a low adoption rate, but it's not that it didn't exist. COVID shows up, and then the adoption for telemedicine ramps pretty dramatically. And to be fair, even today, it's come down, but it's way higher than the previous baseline. I'll give you another example, which are sort of connected devices, right? Those also existed before, but now people are much more focused on adopting connected devices, both the providers and the patients. So what we've seen is that it's a faster adoption, but not a different trend, if you will. The other point I might make is that, sort of an obvious statement, but healthcare is global, and sometimes more obvious than others. But COVID's a great example. You don't get to say, well, I only care about controlling it in the United States. It's a global phenomenon, and everybody needs to realize that, at least in this case, it's borderless. And so prevention and treatment needs to happen across all populations. So those, I think, factors definitely the case. And then there has been some, I will call, new trickle-down effects of the pandemic. I'll just give you another example. We were already short on physicians and nurses, and there's been tons of projections long before COVID about how we needed more healthcare workers. That's probably only exacerbated now, in part because some of our existing cohort has been burned out and they don't want to take on the additional risk. So there's been some of that additional risk. And then I would say that that's also resulted in a demand for what I'll call more gig worker type situations, on-demand nursing, on-demand sort of opportunistic shifts. And maybe just the last point on this question is we've relearned the definition of elective. So I would tell you that prior to the pandemic, if you told us we were invested in a company that created let's just say a valve for, heart repair, almost any patient that you think needs to get their aortic or mitral valve repaired, you're thinking that's like not an elective surgery. That's actually an important thing that needs to happen. What we learned during COVID is unless you were going to die the next day, every procedure essentially got pushed back. And so not just heart valve replacements, forget about your hip replacement. That certainly didn't get done. And so we have thought really hard about what is truly, truly essential and critical in the definition of that, because what we historically thought was bulletproof in terms of, for sure, no matter what, people are going to get this done because they have to get it done. COVID has actually taught us that there's actually a much smaller portion of those interventions that are truly considered essential. So a few thoughts to consider.
Wanted to ask a question about the adoption curve, because I think it's interesting that historically, I'll say the medical industry, so the actual professional, the physicians, the hospitals, et cetera, have been extremely slow adopters of new technology. And what I find interesting is, as far as I've seen, the increase in, say, telehealth and connected devices, as you said, has all been really driven by the consumerization of health. It's the consumer patient merge coming together and saying, hey, I want this convenience. I want this. I mean, my own personal story, we had an ear infection and with my youngest, and we've gone through this many times, and we were able to use, I think it was Teladoc through our insurance. And from the moment we signed on to the moment we had the antibiotic in our hand was 2 hours. Why would I ever do anything different after that,
Yeah. So that is a key point. I think that the consumer increasingly so is an important decision maker in healthcare, right? If you think about the historic major stakeholders, there was, of course, the payer and the provider, and in theory, the patient. But long ago, certainly, for example, my father practiced, the way it went was the doctor says, this is what you should do. The insurance company says, okay, I'll pay for it. And then the patient says, whatever you say, doc. So, that has completely changed. In fact, the consumer has, really become much more involved with their own healthcare proactively, part because I think consumers have gotten more educated, part because of the way the reimbursement has gone, right? You have these large deductibles, all of a sudden people care how they're spending their money. And then I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, sometimes it's gone a little bit too far. And I can tell you that, my wife, who's a cardiac electrophysiologist, the days of the doctor saying, do this, and the patient say, okay, whatever you say, are over. And, now the patients show up and they've done their internet search and said, hey, this is what I want you to do. And in fact, we've gotten to the point where we have this coffee mug, which is kind of a joke. And it says, please do not confuse your Google search with my MD. So, so there's a little bit of back and forth there, but absolutely the consumers have really driven a lot of it. And I think now our companies have paid attention to it for a long, long time. Many of our companies thought that the physician was the customer. And now many of our companies have learned that the patient is actually a really important customer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I agree that the pandemic accelerated that. And it's interesting to see as we kind of keep going. I want to kind of circle back to your comment of, you were not a lot has changed at HealthQuest in the way that you've done things. You were already had a distributed model. You have presence in the Valley, here in Austin, in Florida. How has that distributed model benefited your strategy?
Yeah, so a few things. One, the kinds of companies that we are looking for are located in lots of different locations. They're not necessarily only in the Bay Area or only in Boston. In fact, we find really fantastic, innovative healthcare businesses in lots of different locations, certainly in the central part of the country as well. So having a distributed team that works as a team, though, so they're not running off doing separate activities, allows us to have much better coverage, if you will, of the country and looking at ideas and concepts, especially when you're talking about innovation in the private markets. I'll confess, even in our own situation, being in Austin, I can tell you that prior to that, we had never invested in a healthcare business in Austin, and now we've invested in 3. And it's not that they weren't there, it's that we have now gotten connected. So, I mentioned Everlywell, now Everly Health, but we've also partnered with a company called 83 Bar, which is also based here in Austin, and another company here in Central Texas that's ENT Specialty Partners. And I will tell you that they were, of course, findable from the Bay Area of Florida, but we didn't find them except for the fact that now we are here and we're spending a lot of time here. And so I think that having a presence in different locations that are innovative is actually a benefit.
We live in the weird hybrid world now, right? Well, a physical presence, and we say the 20-minute rule is gone away because of Zoom, but then now physically being here, you have access to a lot more. And so it still kind of exists in how you think about the distributed model. Do you see Austin and Central Texas, you mentioned these companies that you've had, you funded. Do you see a particular sweet spot or sector here that is going to be kind of what we're known for in this case in healthcare?
Yeah, I think I do. When I reflect on obviously having spent a lot of time in the Bay Area, as well as increasingly now in Austin and of course on the East Coast, the way I view Austin and have experienced, it is a bona fide tech hub in terms of, probably any area. From a healthcare point of view, though, it is more up and coming. And when you think about the subsectors of healthcare and the timeframes attached to maturation of businesses, and then you combine that with the inherent advantages in Austin on the tech side, I think that the areas that will come fastest with respect to healthcare are going to be in, digital health and AI applied to health and the connected devices and tech-enabled healthcare services, maybe consumer-facing healthcare. We actually have some interesting biotech companies here But those are the longest lead time in terms of maturation, given the product development cycle. So if you ask me to look forward, I suspect that we will continue to have success in this area in healthcare, but it will probably grow along the lines based on product cycle, as well as the inherent advantages on the tech side that I think will contribute and bleed over into healthcare. I do think there's a lot of great investments being done on the biotech side from an academic medical research point of view, as well as from a recruiting point of view. But if you start all of these businesses at the same time, the drug development one will just take the longest anyways. So that's my hope. And, be fair, we're going to try and contribute to that.
Well, and we'll obviously be charting our own path here in Austin and kind of different from other places. I mean, part of our thesis on Austin Next is that we don't want to be the next Silicon Valley. We want to be the first Austin. So given that you've spent a lot of time in the Valley and in other places, how would you describe the differences between the two regions?
One of the things that, I happen to subscribe to is that Silicon Valley has been very successful. And I don't think we should take anything away from it. It's a large ecosystem. It's very well established. I know others have maybe gone out of their way to discredit it. I think that there's a lot to like and respect about Silicon Valley. That said, I actually think Austin has the more vibrant sort of up and coming feel to the ecosystem. People are more energized and excited. There's sort of a fresher feel. And I think people want to be part of something. And maybe in some sense, the Bay Area is so large and maybe even so successful that the success of any company in the Bay Area almost doesn't matter to the Bay Area. Your neighbor can have a great outcome, good for them. Doesn't really matter to your business, and to be fair, it doesn't matter to the ecosystem. I think in Austin, there's enough critical mass, but the success, especially a real outlier success here in Austin, matters, right? People are happy for this other company, not just because it's a tighter ecosystem, but also because it actually moves the water level, right? Where everybody can sort of participate in the halo of a successful Austin company. In particular in healthcare, as healthcare is ramping, but I think across the board. And so I actually think that the feel is different from a energy and stage. I also think that the starting material, if you will, is different because of different strengths here in Austin. And without overly trying to participate in a political discussion, I also think that the business sort of environment is quite friendly here as well. So there's quite a bit of nuance there, and I do think Austin, as it continues to grow and be successful at whatever state it looks like in 20 years, it will not be the same as Silicon Valley. It'll be its own, and we'll be our own ecosystem.
We seem to be hitting a major inflection point. At least I feel like we're now, the flywheels kind of move in. It's, people, capital, and companies are coming here because people, capital, and companies are coming here. So that kind of creates a nice thing. And then we also see, we're starting to see kind of some of those crown jewels. Like as we record this, recently Tesla announced that they were moving their headquarters here. Every week, it's another kind of large company. And so, as you said, there's a point now that Silicon Valley got so large and a little bit lost that all for one kind of mentality, right? Because of the success. So as we are hitting this inflection point and kind of reaching into starting to be almost a top tier, what are the learnings do you think that we can take from the Valley, both successes and some of the challenges?
Yeah. So what I would say is that, Austin we should really embrace what's bringing the growth and success to the city, and to be fair, all the recognition and fanfare. And it's principally innovation, entrepreneurship, being open-minded, being business-friendly. I think those are key attributes. I mean, the Valley actually has been great at fostering that also. But one of the issues I think that we should try and avoid here in Austin is that the success there didn't actually happen to necessarily everybody, right? What happened is there was the tech sector in the Bay Area that was really successful. And if you were in that sector, then it was great. But if you were not in that sector and you happened to live there, it actually wasn't that great because everything got more expensive. the traffic got worse. You couldn't find certain services at reasonable prices. Everybody got pushed out, and now people are literally commuting an hour and a half or two each way to get into their work. So I do think that the success of the area will be primarily driven probably by this innovation and entrepreneurship and business friendly atmosphere. But what we need to do is make sure it's part of the fabric of Austin holistically, not this separate sector within Austin that's super successful and has gone off, because then you get this tension between community members. And so I do think that this innovation ecosystem has to be part of the fabric of Austin as opposed to a neighbor, which also means that the innovation sector actually needs to participate in the community. And I think that back and forth, so that when the inevitable growth and success continue to happen, the whole area gets pulled up, as opposed to just a small group of it. And unfortunately, in the Bay Area, there's a lot of tension now because of the disparities in some sense.
One of the things that I think really positions Austin well to deal with that hurdle is, and this is something I was unaware of until living here, is the amazing manufacturing base that we have. Austin builds things, and builds from non-technical things all the way to semiconductor chips, rockets, and electric vehicles and batteries. And I think you hear some of the opportunities that are available, straight out of high school, straight out of a 2-year college. I think that becomes a really interesting opportunity to really lift all boats and really have all of the different sectors and all the different economic strata grow.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, and it's interesting, when I have these conversations with, friends who are looking at Austin or hearing about Austin, of course they hear about the healthcare IT activities, but they also love hearing that Yeti is, headquartered here, and they know about Yeti, and it's a totally different kind of profile, if you will. And we talk about the fact that I guess now it's technically Amazon, but Whole Foods is started, and so there's a lot of ways to innovate and grow and build businesses that don't only require software engineers or whatnot to come to town and to flourish. And so I do think that that's a key component.
Yeah. So rounding back to the capital scene itself, I mean, besides yourself, we've seen Sapphire, 8VC, Briar Capital, iFly, Bedrock all set up offices here. And then in the last, 18 months, KDT, Revival, GigaFund, Trust, ATX Ventures, Sante, Live Oak, all raising new funds. And by my rough math, that's $2.5 billion of new capital floating around. How do you see the Austin funding environment changing with so much dry powder now?
Yeah, I think that one, the opportunity for entrepreneurs to get funded locally is higher. I do think that, as with anything, the more capital, the more companies, the more competition. So we will continue to see that activity. I'll give you a small anecdote. A couple of years ago, I was invited to a social dinner, but the group participants happened to be those who all manage their funds. I happen to be maybe one of two healthcare folks or something, but a lot of tech folks and other private equity. And this is pre-pandemic, so the attendance was not gated by that, but it might have been 12, 13, 14 of us. I went to a similar event. Again, the definition was you essentially run a investment fund. I think the invite list was like 50 or 55. And it's because a lot of people have moved into town now. So just the growth of capital, as you pointed out, for resident firms who are raising new funds or those who are moving is significant. And I do think that it will follow with more companies, and to be fair, more pricing pressure on the investors, which is good for the entrepreneurs. And so, more and more will flourish. The other part is generically valuations are rising and generically liquidity is moving. I just think that Austin will not be unique to, separated from that. We're going to see it here as well. It used to be everybody would lament that the same company in the Bay Area compared to anybody else in the country would be twice as expensive, and maybe no different than the housing. That arbitrage is getting increasingly smaller because of the capital ecosystem here in Austin.
Clearly, that's a great description of what the capital system looks like in Austin today. But it's clear that even though the capital is much more readily available here now, it's not alone in defining the success of the Austin region and the Austin ecosystem. What do you see as the biggest challenges today here in Austin that our ecosystem is facing?
Yeah, I think that the challenges, especially in the different areas of entrepreneurship and growth, is usually the thing that is the least portable. So capital is highly portable. It will travel. Ironically, the technology or the idea is portable. It's the people that's the hardest part. People are willing to move, and of course, lots of people are moving to Austin. But of those three components, it's the hardest to move. And so I actually think that what we will benefit from in the next cycle, but not fully yet, are this crop of repeat entrepreneurs. Many of the companies that we're running into that we find interesting are being led by first-time entrepreneurs. When you go to the Bay Area and you hear a pitch, the CEO says, well, I was at these other three logos, all of which you've heard of, because they've cycled through it. Maybe not necessarily even the CEO, but just some sort of senior executive having multiple turns at it. And I think what will happen is this family tree will happen, right? We'll have a successful company, and then the top 5 or 10 executives will all leave after the success, and then they will all start their own companies, and we'll have this generational, exponential growth. But at least, certainly in healthcare, we're probably at Gen 1 right now, where lots of interest, lots of good raw materials, very few entrepreneurs saying, I've done this multiple times. So I think that's one component that's a challenge, but to be fair, I think we'll get addressed over time. The other, which everybody who lives in Austin knows about, is just the infrastructure. And what's amazing is when we came here, everybody told me, oh, the traffic's terrible and everything. And of course, compared to the Bay Area, it's nothing. But I think that compared to those who lived in Austin 5 or 10 years before, it's been dramatically changed. So I suspect that will only continue to be more pronounced unless we're really aggressive about investing in the infrastructure and again integrating into the full community. And I think that those two components will be important, because at some point, if we end up like Silicon Valley in some of these components, then we'll get similar resistance and ultimately outflow. But I think those are a couple of things that we should consider.
Garheng, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much. We'd like to end the discussion the way we do all of our podcasts. So Garheng, what's next, Austin?
Well, we touched on it. I'm excited about Austin currently and the future of Austin, in part because we're at this kind of Goldilocks moment. I hope we can extend it, but this Goldilocks moment of being large enough to have critical mass, being attractive enough so that lots of really talented people want to be here, but not so big that we can't be an extended ecosystem family. So I actually think that Austin is going to go through this golden age. Maybe it's the next 20 years, plus or minus, where we'll continue to grow and be this magnet for entrepreneurship and innovation. In my specific area of healthcare, I actually think that Austin has a shot at being a healthcare top tier hub, if you will. And I think it will come from more of that digital health, tech-enabled healthcare service side, maybe ultimately AI-enabled drug development. And I do think that it'll be actually pretty glorious next couple of decades. So that's my hope for what's next.
Garheng Kong, thank you so much. All the best to you and to the folks at HealthQuest Capital. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
So what's next, Austin? We're glad you've joined us on this journey. Please subscribe at your favorite podcast catcher, leave us a review, and let your colleagues know about us. This will help us grow the podcast and continue bringing you unique interviews and insights. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.